Aileen Carol Wuornos, born February 29, 1956 to October 9, 2002, was an American serial killer. In 1989–1990, while engaging in street prostitution along highways in Florida, she shot dead and robbed 7 of her male clients. Wuornos claimed that her clients had either raped or attempted to rape her, and that the homicides of the men were committed in self-defense. Wuornos was sentenced to death for 6 of the murders. She was executed on October 9, 2002, by lethal injection after spending more than 10 years on Florida's. Wuornos was born Aileen Carol Pittman on February 29, 1956, in Rochester, Michigan. Her mother, Diane Wuornos, born 1939, was 14 years old when she married Aileen's father, 18-year-old Leo Pittman, 1936 to 1969, on June 3, 1954. On March 14, 1955, Diane gave birth to Aileen's older brother Keith. After less than 2 years of marriage, and 2 months before Aileen was born, Diane filed for divorce. She gave birth to Aileen at the age of 16. Wuornos never met her father. In 1967, Leo Pittman was sentenced to life imprisonment for kidnapping and raping a 7-year-old girl. Pittman was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He committed suicide by hanging in prison on January 30, 1969. In January 1960, when Wuornos was almost 4 years old, Diane abandoned her children, leaving them with their maternal grandparents, Lori and Britta Wuornos, both alcoholics. NWHO legally adopted Keith and Aileen on March 18, 1960. By the age of 11, Wuornos began engaging in sexual activities in school in exchange for cigarettes, drugs, and food. She had also engaged in sexual activities with her brother. Wuornos said that her alcoholic grandfather had sexually assaulted and beaten her when she was a child. Before beating her, he would force her to strip out of her clothes in 1970. At age 14, she became pregnant, 19, after being raped by a family friend. Wuornos gave birth to a boy at a home for unwed mothers on March 23, 1971, and the child was placed for adoption. A few months after her son was born, she dropped out of school at about the same time that her grandmother died of liver failure. When Wuornos was 15, her grandfather threw her out of the house, and she began living in the woods near her old home and supported herself through prostitution. 2. Death row. On May 27, 1974, at age 18, Wuornos was arrested in Jefferson County, Colorado, for driving under the influence, DUI, disorderly conduct, and firing a .22 caliber pistol from a moving vehicle. She was later charged with failure to appear. In 1976, Wuornos hitchhiked to Florida, where she met 69-year-old yacht club president Louis Gratz Fell. They married quickly, and the announcement of their nuptials was printed in the local newspaper's society pages. Wuornos continually involved herself in confrontations at their local bar and went to jail briefly for assault. She also hit Fell with his own cane, leading him to gain a restraining order against her within weeks of the marriage. She returned to Michigan, where, on July 14, 1976, she was arrested at Bernie's Club, in Mansalona, in Antrim County and charged with assault and disturbing the peace for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head. On July 17, her brother Keith died of esophageal cancer and Wuornos received $10,000 from his life insurance. Wuornos and Fell annulled their marriage on July 21 after only 9 weeks. In August 1976, Wuornos was given a $105 fine for drunk driving. She used the money inherited from her brother to pay the fine and spent the rest within 2 months buying luxuries including a new car, which she wrecked shortly afterwards. In 1978, at the age of 22, she attempted suicide by shooting herself in the stomach. Between the ages of 14 and 22, she attempted suicide 6 times. On May 20, 1981, Wuornos was arrested in Edgewater, Florida, for the armed robbery of a convenience store, where she stole $35 and 2 packs of cigarettes. She was sentenced to prison on May 4, 1982, and released on June 30, 1983. On May 1, 1984, Wuornos was arrested for attempting to pass forged checks at a bank in Key West. On November 30, 1985, she was named as a suspect in the theft of a revolver and ammunition in Pasco County. On January 4, 1986, Wuornos was arrested in Miami and charged with car theft, resisting arrest, and obstruction of justice for providing identification bearing her aunt's name. Miami police officers found a .38 caliber revolver and a box of ammunition in the stolen car. On June 2, 1986, Volusia County deputy sheriffs detained Wuornos for questioning after a male companion accused her of pulling a gun in his car and demanding $200. Wuornos was found to be carrying spare ammunition, and police discovered a .22 pistol under the passenger seat she had occupied. In 1986, 30-year-old Wuornos met 24-year-old Tyria Moore, a motel maid, at a Daytona Beach gay bar called Zodiac. They moved in together, and Wuornos supported them with her earnings as a prostitute. On July 4, 1987, Daytona Beach police detained Wuornos and Moore at a bar for questioning regarding an incident in which they were accused of assault and battery with a beer bottle. On March 12, 1988, Wuornos accused a Daytona Beach bus driver of assault. She claimed that he pushed her off the bus following a confrontation. Moore was listed as a witness to the incident. Later, at her trial, Wuornos stated, "It was love beyond imaginable. Earthly words cannot describe how I felt about Tyria." Before her execution, Wuornos claimed to still be in love with Moore. Wuornos murdered 7 men within a period of 12 months. All the men were motorists between the ages of 40 and 65. Richard Charles Mallory, age 51, electronics store owner in Clearwater. Date of murder, November 30, 1989. Wuornos claimed that Mallory beat, raped, and sodomized her, after he drove her to an abandoned area for sexual services. Mallory was Wuornos' first victim, and she claimed to have killed him in self-defense. Later, it became known that Mallory had previously been convicted of attempted rape in Maryland. 2 days after the murder, a Volusia County deputy sheriff found Mallory's abandoned vehicle. On December 13, his body was found several miles away in a wooded area. He had been shot several times, and 2 bullets to the left lung were found to have been the cause of death. 1. David Andrew Spears, age 47, construction worker in Winter Garden. He was declared missing as of May 19, 1990. On June 1, 1990, his naked body was found along US 19 in Citrus County. He had been shot 6 times by a .22 pistol. Charles Edmund Karskaden, age 40, part-time rodeo worker. Date of murder, May 31, 1990. On June 6, 1990, his body was found in Pasco County. He had been shot 9 times with a .22 caliber weapon. The body had been wrapped in an electric blanket and was badly decomposing when found. Witnesses saw Wuornos in possession of Karskaden's car, and Wuornos had also pawned a gun identified as belonging to Karskaden, 38. Peter Abraham Seams, age 65, retired merchant seaman. In June 1990, Seams left Jupiter, Florida, for Arkansas. On July 4, 1990, his car was found in Orange Springs, Florida. Moore and Wuornos were seen abandoning the car, and Wuornos' handprint was found on the interior door handle. His body was never found. Troy Eugene Burris, age 50, sausage salesman from Ocala, Florida. On July 31, 1990, he was reported missing. On August 4, 1990, his body was found in a wooded area along State Road 19 in Marion County. He had been shot twice. 1. Charles Richard Dick Humphreys, age 56, retired U.S. Air Force major, former state child abuse investigator, and former chief of police. Date of murder, September 11, 1990. On September 12, 1990, his body was found in Marion County. He was fully clothed and had been shot 7 times in the head and torso. His car was found in Sewanee County. Walter Geno Antonio, age 62, trucker, security guard, and reserve police officer. On November 19, 1990, Antonio's nearly naked body was found near a remote logging road in Dixie County. He had been shot 4 times. 5 days later, his car was found in Brevard County. On July 4, 1990, Wuornos and Tyria Moore abandoned victim Peter Seams' car after they were involved in an accident. Rhonda Bailey, who witnessed the accident, provided police with a description of 2 women, 40, which later led to a media campaign to locate them. Police also found some of the victims' belongings in pawnshops. Wuornos' fingerprint that was found on a receipt at one of the pawnshops matched the print that was left in Seam's car. Wuornos had a criminal record in Florida, and samples of her prints were in a database. On January 9, 1991, Wuornos was arrested at the Last Resort Biker Bar in Volusia County on the pretext of an outstanding warrant in the name of Lori Grody. Police located Moore the next day in Pittston, Pennsylvania. She agreed to elicit a confession from Wuornos in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Moore returned with the police to Florida, where she was put up in a motel. Under police guidance, she made numerous telephone calls to Wuornos, pleading for help in clearing her name. 3 days later, on January 16, 1991, Wuornos confessed to the murders. She claimed the men had tried to rape her and she killed them in self-defense. In November 1991, Wuornos was legally adopted by 44-year-old Aileen Wuornos, who saw her photo in a newspaper. On January 14, 1992, Wuornos went to trial for the murder of Richard Charles Mallory. Although previous convictions are normally inadmissible in criminal trials, under Florida's Williams rule, the prosecution was allowed to introduce evidence related to her other crimes to show a pattern of illegal activity. On January 27, 1992, Wuornos was convicted of Mallory's murder with help from Moore's testimony. At her sentencing, psychiatrists for the defense testified that Wuornos was mentally unstable and diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. 4 days later, she was sentenced to death. Wuornos' defense made efforts during the trial to introduce evidence that Mallory was previously convicted for attempted rape in Maryland and served a sentence in a maximum security correctional facility providing remediation to sexual offenders. Records obtained from the correctional institution showed that from 1958 to 1962, Mallory was committed for treatment and observation resulting from a criminal charge of assault with intent to rape. These records also reflect 8 years of overall treatment from the facility. In 1961, it was observed of Mr. Mallory that he possessed strong sociopathic trends. However, the judge refused to allow the records to be admitted in court as evidence and denied Wuornos' request for a retrial. On March 31, 1992, Wuornos pleaded no contest to the murders of Charles Richard Humphreys, Troy Eugene Burris, and David Andrew Spears, saying she wanted to get right with God. In her statement to the court, she said, in part, "I wanted to confess to you that Richard Mallory did violently rape me as I've told you, but these others did not. They only began to start to." On May 15, 1992, Wuornos was given 3 more death sentences. In June 1992, Wuornos pleaded guilty to the murder of Charles Edmund Carskaddon. In November 1992, she received her 5th death sentence. In February 1993, Wuornos pleaded guilty to the murder of Walter Geno Antonio and was sentenced to death again. No charges were brought against her for the murder of Peter Abraham Seams, as his body was never found. In all, Wuornos received 6 death sentences. Wuornos told several inconsistent stories about the killings. She claimed initially that all 7 men had either raped or attempted to rape her while she was working as a prostitute, but later recanted the claim of self-defense, citing robbery and a desire to leave no witnesses as the reason for murder. During an interview with filmmaker Nick Broomfield, when Wuornos thought the cameras were off, she told him that it was, in fact, self-defense, but she could not stand being on death row, where she had been for 10 years at that point, and wanted to die. Wuornos was incarcerated at the Florida Department of Corrections Broward Correctional Institution, BCI, death row for women, then transferred to the Florida State Prison for execution. Her appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court was denied in 1996. In a 2001 petition to the Florida Supreme Court, she stated her intention to dismiss her legal counsel and terminate all pending appeals. "I killed those men," she wrote, "robbed them as cold as ice. And I'd do it again, too. There's no chance in keeping me alive or anything, because I'd kill again. I have hate crawling through my system. I am so sick of hearing this 'she's crazy' stuff. I've been evaluated so many times. I'm competent, sane, and I'm trying to tell the truth. I'm one who seriously hates human life and would kill again." While her attorneys argued that she was not mentally competent to make such a request, Wuornos insisted that she knew what she was doing, and a court-appointed panel of psychiatrists agreed. In 2002, Wuornos began accusing prison matrons of tainting her food with dirt, saliva, and urine. She said she had overheard conversations among prison personnel, trying to get me so pushed over the brink by them I'd wind up committing suicide before the execution, and wishing to rape me before execution. She also complained of strip searches, tight handcuffing, door kicking, frequent window checks, low water pressure, mildew on her mattress, and catcalling, in distaste and a pure hatred towards me. Wuornos threatened to boycott showers and food trays when certain officers were on duty. In the meantime, my stomach's growling away and I'm taking showers through the sink of my cell. Her attorney stated that Ms. Wuornos really just wants to have proper treatment, humane treatment until the day she's executed. He added, she believes what she's written. In the weeks before her execution, Wuornos gave a series of interviews to documentarian Nick Broomfield and talked about being taken away to meet God and Jesus and the angels and whatever is beyond the beyond. In her final interview, she once again charged that her mind was tortured at BCI, and her head crushed by sonic pressure. Food poisonings and other abuses worsened, she said, each time she complained, with the goal of making her appear insane, or to drive her insane. She also turned on her interviewer. You sabotaged my ass. Society, and the cops, and the system. A raped woman got executed, and was used for books and movies and shit. Her final on-camera words were, thanks a lot, society, for railroading my ass. Don Bodkins, a childhood friend of Wuornos, later told Broomfield that her verbal abuse was directed at society and the media in general, not at him specifically. Wuornos' execution by lethal injection took place on October 9, 2002. She declined her last meal, which could have been anything under $20, and opted for a cup of coffee instead. Her last words were, yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back, like Independence Day, with Jesus. June 6, like the movie. Big mothership and all, I'll be back, I'll be back. She died at 9:47 a.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time. She was the second woman in Florida and the 10th in the United States to be executed since the 1976 United States Supreme Court decision restoring capital punishment. After her death, Wuornos' body was cremated. Wuornos' ashes were scattered beneath a tree in her native Michigan by Wuornos' childhood friend Don Bodkins. At Wuornos' request, Natalie Merchant's song, Carnival, from her album Tiger Lily was played at her funeral. Wuornos spent many hours listening to this album on death row.